let's go throw some snow. First attempt without an impeller kit. Now we're gonna measure to the farthest point of where it threw the snow. 40 feet. Anything past this line will be considered an additional throwing distance. Second attempt with an impeller kit. Here's our line, and here's all our bullet holes past that. That's pretty good. Hey guys and gals, welcome to Garage Gear. I'm JB. Just so we're clear here, these procedures will be good for most two-stage snowblowers. And if you have an ariens, you might want to lean in for this one. First step, we're going to remove the spark plug to prevent any unwanted startups. Next, we got to get the chute out of the way. Now your chute may be a little different, and that's okay. You just need enough space and room so that we can get it out of the way and get down inside this tube. Now for me and my chute, I got kind of lucky because all I had to do is disconnect the two bolts on the back side of this post. The chute slid right back, and now I can get right inside this chute hole and I'm good to go. Now let's get a look inside. Now inside here, this entire black piece is called your impeller. This part right here is called your impeller blade. It's also known as an impeller wing, impeller arm, impeller paddle. It's got a lot of names. For now, we'll just call it an impeller blade. This machine has 3 of them, and if we look closer, there is a gap right in here, and it's about 1/4 inch wide. That gap here is what leads to a buildup of snow around the outside, round the outside, round the outside, round the outside, and that builds up a big barrier of snow, causing the impeller to slow down and lose its throwing power, especially when you're going through the heavy wet stuff at the end of your driveway. Basically, it clogs up the works. That gap is about 1/4 inch wide, and what we're gonna do is narrow it down to about 1 millimeter. And we're gonna do all this with an impeller kit. I bought this impeller kit with my own money. I'm not sponsored, and I'll have it linked down below in the description. This piece of rubber here is about 1/4 inch thick, and it's super flexible. For these ariens snowblowers, you're gonna want some flexibility. You'll see why in a second. I'm gonna take this rubber paddle, put this metal washer plate up on top, and we're gonna bolt this to each and every impeller blade. Kind of something like this, with this plate up on top. Okay, so this ariens has 3 impeller blades. What I'm gonna do is put one of these rubber paddles on each of the 3 blades. Now, if you have a snowblower with 4 impeller blades, what you could do is put one of these rubber paddles on one end and then one at the opposite end, and you could get away with just putting 2 on. Or you could put one all the way around and you're good to go. Now, this is all stainless steel hardware here, and it's all the same in terms of sizing. They also give you some lock nuts to put on, which is nice. These really hold them on tight, and to help keep this video tight with the YouTube algorithm, would you mind hitting that like button? Thank you very much. We have an issue. These impeller blades or arms are cupped, but I have done this before on my old ariens snowblower, which was designed the exact same way. So these paddles, if I place it in here like this, you can see that it is just too darn big. We're gonna have to trim it down. I'm probably gonna hack off this one hole here, and we'll probably just use about 2/3 of the paddle. That's what I did in my last unit, and by the way, these holes here make minor adjustments really easy to do. What I'm gonna do from here is just take a line and draw it and make sure that they're equal. So all I have remaining is 2 holes to put the bolts through. I'm gonna measure these guys out. 3.5 inches should do. Go right about there and right about there. There's our line. Now having a silver Sharpie here would help, so if you got one available, use it. Me, I just got my trusty red marker. We'll go with that. Now from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna call in our good old friend, Mr. Wilton. We're gonna slide in our rubber paddles. They're all at about the same height. That's good. Now this is a really simple trick to get them all the same length and all really close in weight. What we're gonna do now is cut them using a multi-tool. And from here, we're just gonna buzz these bad boys. There we go. Good deal. Just the right size we need them to be. Okay, so now we have another issue. And again, this comes down to those impeller blades being cupped or curved. So I want to use these stainless steel plates. These will provide more surface area to hold down that impeller paddle exactly where we want it. Now keep in mind, not all impeller blades are flat. Some have a little lip at the end. We need to do a little bit of fabricating. So what I did is I bent the edges of it in my vise just to get it to fit like it should inside that impeller blade. As much as I want to use these, they're very difficult to position inside that cupped impeller blade. But what I have instead is a lot of washers. These will allow that paddle to conform better to that cupped impeller blade. These metal brackets kind of work, but the more I round this rubber paddle, you can see that more of the rubber is kind of sticking through the hole there. And that's going to make it harder for us to get our bolts in. So if I take this, stick the bolt through, this is going to cover that hole perfectly and allow this paddle to conform better inside that cupped impeller blade. So now I'm going to take my impeller paddle, I'm going to stick it down where it needs to be. Basically just like that. And then from here, what I'm gonna do is take my marker, press down on the paddle, and then draw my dots. I'm gonna draw them right inside the center of those big holes. And I know somebody's gonna hate on me for this because I'm not using a silver Sharpie, but it is what it is. We work with what we have. And there you go, I have 2 dots, one right there and one right there. I can see them, we're good to go. So at this point, it's time to start drilling. And what I have here on the top of my drill is a step bit. And this bit will allow me to get down incrementally so that way I can make the hole just the right size. It'll dig in perfectly into these impeller blades and I'll get the job done pretty quick. Now I'm not gonna overthink this. I'm gonna hold the impeller blade with one hand off to the side while I drill the hole on the other. Watch your fingers. There we go. That was quick. Now let's just see if one of our bolts fits here through that hole. Perfect. It fits. Now we're just gonna drill our other hole. And good. Now you can see we have the 2 holes. We also have a few filings in there. I'm gonna vacuum those out really quick. Now what I'm gonna do is take my rubber paddle, place it with the bolts inside and see how she fits. Just like that. Next, what we gotta do is take our lock nuts and place them up underneath those bolts that we just put in. I'm gonna get it threaded on just like so this way. Now we just gotta tighten them down. What I can do from here is take my wrench, work it underneath, get it on that nut, and then from here, tighten it down on the top. Not much playroom to work with here, but you do what you gotta do. Now we're gonna tackle the other side. Never have I ever stuck my hands in such a weird hole before. Okay, we can still wiggle it around a little bit. From here, this is an important step. What you want to do is make sure that this rubber paddle is not creating too much friction around the outside edge of this impeller housing. So I'm going to take it, bring it up with my hand, push it through, and ensure that it's not bumping up to any surfaces maybe right here or around the rest of the inside. So I'm just going to reach down, pull up the next impeller. Don't seem to have too much friction going on because I'm about 1 millimeter away. It's not exactly making perfect contact, but it's really darn close. Now, if it's too close, you could tap it back with a hammer or just nudge it with your fingers just a little bit, put it in the perfect position, and then from there, bolt it down. From here, I'm exactly 1 millimeter away. I am so close. This thing spins just fine. You want to give it about 2 or 3 rotations around to ensure that it fits, and then tighten it up. Now, another thing you could do to tighten it down is reach through the bucket like this. Again, being careful, get your wrench on it, and then take some extensions and tighten it down. You want it snug here. You do not want these coming free. Now, just a word to the wise, as you tighten that down, sometimes the rubber will tend to expand out a little bit. So what you want to do is give yourself a little bit of leeway, maybe push it back toward that impeller blade a little bit away from the wall of the housing, then tighten it down because you'll notice as it compresses, it'll bump up with that wall. So at this point, I now have this paddle exactly where I want it. So as I pull it up, it's about 1 millimeter away. It's not gonna create too much friction around the housing. Everything's traveling just the way it should. Perfect. So from here, I have one of the 3 impeller blades on. I'm gonna go ahead and install the other 2 impeller paddles, and I'm gonna make sure I test it as well to make sure that those paddles spin around nicely inside. Let's get to work. Okay, I just finished installing the 3rd impeller paddle, but there's something I want to show you. So you can see that I have it about 1 millimeter away from the edge of the housing, and take a look. There are tiny little metal shards along the edge, and those came from me spinning the impeller around, and it picked those up, and it's brushing them along the surface here up to the top. Kind of cool. That's how you know you're pretty tight with the clearance on those impeller paddles. I'm gonna vacuum those out. All right, so let's spin these babies around. There's your first one. There's your second. And your third. At this point, we're gonna reinstall our chute. Boom, 9/16 bolt, let's tighten them up. Good, the chute's in good working order. Reconnect the spark plug. Good, this impeller kit is now fully installed. Our chute's back on, spark plug's plugged back in. If you're ready, I'm ready, let's go throw some snow. Now we're gonna measure from the outside edge of where the auger housing was traveling to the farthest point of where it threw the snow. All right, we are right at about 40 feet. So these are all the bullet holes from our first test. These were right at about 40 feet. It was actually about 39 and 10 inches, but we're just gonna round up to keep our math easy. With the bulk of the bullets ending about here, anything past this line and the additional distance from where we're throwing from will be considered an additional throwing distance. All right, let's see how she throws. Let's fire this baby up. Now let's get these augers spinning. Everything sounds good so far. Just a heads up, your unit might sound a little different. Mine sounds a little different right now. This new sound will eventually go away as the impellers work their way in and wear into the housing. Now this happens just about every single time I install an impeller kit. I get this little hint of burnt rubber going on. Again, that's the impellers breaking in. That'll go away after a few uses. And if you look deep inside the impeller housing, you might see some black tread marks. Again, that's the rubber working its way around, and eventually those do fade away. It's a good idea to let those break in for at least a couple of minutes before you start throwing any snow. Let's get at it. Look at that! Go take a peek and see what we got. Okay, so here's our line, and here's all our bullet holes past that. That's pretty good. Some of the single bullets got pretty far actually, but we're gonna measure the bulk right here. Okay, so we're talking about an additional 8 feet. 8 feet over here, plus an additional 3 feet over there from our second throwing spot. We're looking at about 51 total feet. That's pretty impressive. Now, your results may vary based on your snowblower, the snow consistency, the wind speed, but we got 51 feet, a 10-foot plus gain by adding an impeller kit. I'm excited. Now, here are some tips and tricks to help you out with this procedure, and some questions that usually come up with this. First, here's some info about the snow that I threw. So let's have a look at what we're working with here. This snow I've been piling up for the last several days. At the bottom, it's probably pretty packed, and on the top, we have this powdery lake effect snow that's been coming down right now. We also have about a 5 to 10 mile an hour wind, and keep in mind that your results may vary based on the type of snow that you may get. With all that considered, figure that all in however you must. Given my situation and my time constraints, this was the best I could do. Not bad for this test, and I made sure that I took in a full load of snow on both attempts to ensure a close equal test. Throwing distance. Yes, this does improve your throwing distance. Not double, but still good. Even though we increased the length of each impeller arm by only 1/4 of an inch, this makes a huge difference. In my experience, every single snowblower that I've put one of these impeller kits on has seen an increase in throwing distance. Where this mod really makes a difference is at the end of the driveway throwing the heavy, wet street snow. You may not get the best throwing distance with this heavy, wet snow, but it will definitely be thrown further. This is where this mod gets a huge win. Instead of your snowblower just clogging up and dropping the snow out of the chute, which can usually render most snowblowers useless at that point, it keeps the impellers moving, clearing out any wet, sticky snow inside. This can make a big difference if you have a lot piled up at the end of your driveway at times. Even this big 32-inch Ariens with a 420cc engine and SHO still had snow built up around the outside when I gave it its first test during a lake effect snowstorm. And if this got bad enough on just about any snowblower, eventually it would just clog it up. No more, it wipes it all clean. What's really cool now is I can launch this snow across the street and into my neighbor's yard. Couldn't do that when you first got it. Nope. And I'm sure they're gonna love it. That's illegal, you know. It actually is. Depending on your area, I've heard this from several people, including police officers. You're not supposed to throw snow back into the street. Whoops. Now let's talk about the paddles. I've been putting these paddles on many snowblowers over the years, dozens upon dozens. I've had them on my old Ariens Deluxe 28 for over 10 years now, and they've held up great. Never had to touch them, not even once. Now, as far as these rubber paddles go, you could also make your own using rubber mud flaps, the sidewall of a tire, and check this out. I even got a piece of conveyor belt that I used to make mine out of. Not too shabby. As long as whatever rubber paddles you use are cut to equal size, you're good. You just don't want things getting thrown out of balance. I remember being a little skeptical before I installed my first impeller kit. I didn't think it was gonna do anything really. Boy, was I wrong. I remember the first time I tested it, I shot it from my sidewalk and it hit my house 48 feet away. Snow was banging off the windows. Even the garage gal came out and yelled at me for that one.
Timmy, what are you doing?
So check your aim and know where you're throwing. Holes rusting. Those holes will rust. Nope. If you spray them down with fluid film at least once or twice a season, you'll be in good shape. When you're drilling or bolting down those paddles, your impeller may move on you too. Here's a way to hold that impeller in place. Now on some models, what you could do to prevent the augers from spinning and the impeller in the back from spinning is you could take something like a broom handle and just wedge it through a certain way to kind of brace your impeller in place like that. That does work to some extent, but I find it easier just to be careful with my hand, hold that impeller in place and drill down. You could try this and this may work for you. Belts. I personally have not seen seen any issues with them after installing an impeller kit. Unless your paddles are rubbing really hard around that impeller housing, you shouldn't have any major issues. This may put a little extra load on the belts themselves due to the impeller picking up all that extra snow as it's spinning around the inside. But again, in my experience, I've never had a belt issue other than normal wear and tear. I've done some videos on how to replace belts in the past, and I'll have those videos linked down below in the description. Self-tapping screws. Now here's a hot topic that comes up often. Could you use self-tapping screws instead of bolts? Screws are essentially a wedge. Plenty of people have said, JB, I use self-tapping screws and they work just fine. Hey, you do you. I just like using bolts. With a nut on the backside, they ain't coming free that way. And for some odd reason, these kits only come with 4 self-tapping screws. Not enough to do the job that way. If I knew I wasn't keeping the snowblower long term, I would probably go ahead and use the self-tapping screws. Silicone sprays or other coatings to put on your snowblower. These do work, but let's be honest, after the first couple passes, all the snow passing through the machine usually wipes them off pretty quick. That stuff's more for preventing the onset of rust. This unit was coated inside with silicone spray prior to the first test. And if you've been following this channel for any length of time, you're probably aware that I've created a full snowblower rust proofing course, and I'll have that link down below in the description as well. In my experience, this mod will beat any spray that you put inside, which I still do, and it allows the machine to consistently throw farther and prevent snow from sticking where it matters, in the impeller housing. How long does this whole procedure take? About an hour to an hour and a half to complete. This could depend on the brand of your snowblower. And here's something interesting. I found that it does up the resale value of your snowblower too. Every single time I sold a snowblower with an impeller kit on it, I generally got about $50 to $100 more on the sale. I consider this mod an investment because I know I'm gonna get my money back down the road. And then some. This is just one of those mods that just keeps giving and giving and giving. I also get a lot of subscribers asking, why don't companies just install this in the first place? I heard that there was a brand that did this decades ago. Not sure which one though, but my guess is that production costs and time get in the way. I think the fabrication process comes into play too. If your impeller housings are not all built identically, all the same way down the factory line, you could have issues with impellers not fitting, excessive wear, or other complications along the way. Hey, if I was running a snowblower company and I said that my snowblower never clogged and threw twice as far compared to any other brand, I'd probably be selling a lot of snowblowers. These companies are gonna do what they do. It's all about making that money. Now, here's a big one. Will this affect my warranty? Well, I have both the Ariens owner's manual and the engine manual right here. The residential warranty on this Ariens is 3 years, 1 year commercial. In the engine manual, it states, as the small off-road engine owner, you should, however, be aware that Ariens company may deny you warranty coverage if your small off-road engine or a part has failed due to abuse, neglect, improper maintenance, or unapproved modifications. Now page 26 of the owner's manual states, exclusions, items not covered by this warranty. Parts that are not genuine Ariens service parts are not covered by this warranty and may void the warranty if the parts result in premature wear or damage to the product. Damages resulting from the installation or use of any part, accessory, or attachment which is not approved by Ariens company for use with products identified herein are not covered by this warranty. So, will this void my warranty? You just voided your warranty! Sounds like a yes. Am I afraid? No. The snowblower now performs better. If something happens to my machine, I'm not calling a dealer, loading it in my truck, taking it to them, waiting over 6 weeks for the repair to be complete, and then going to pick it back up again. I'm not playing that game. I'll just fix it myself. And if something breaks, I'll fix it and I'll make a video on it. So if you're afraid, wait until your warranty's up and then have at it. Do so at your own risk. I will say this, I did this modification on my old Ariens Deluxe 28 after 1 year of owning it. It threw a hell of a lot better and never had a single issue. You'll wear out the auger bearings! Nope. Coming up on year 11 and still looking good. That Ariens Deluxe was given basic maintenance every single year, and now my dad, the garage geezer, he has it, and he's still using it. He's chucking snow over the neighbor's front yard and into their driveway. This Ariens snowblower is now absolutely unstoppable and is ready for anything winter can throw at it. For more cool garage gear content, click or tap the screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the garage.